Hello everybody, John here again, and today onto the garage we're doing part 2 of our fun discussion on the differences in language between British English and American English when it comes to car parts and things connected with the garage. And as we discussed in the previous video, if you're looking for something xenophobic or American bashing, go elsewhere. This ain't what this is. And I actually prefer probably 50-50 of the things we're going to talk about in American English. So it is purely a great discussion amongst friends about which terms do we prefer, not prefer, understand, not understand, and where do some of them come from. And I want to start off the part 2 of this with one that lots of people had guessed would be near the top of my list. And I've got to say, it is one of the ones where I'm going, I really can't get on board with the American one. And that is, if we look at the video clip that you're seeing now, then you're going to be seeing Purdy, my XK8, and her fuel filler flap, where we put petrol. You all know where this is going. My car has a petrol tank, my car has a petrol gauge, and I visit petrol station. Now, in the States, we don't use the term petrol, we typically use the term gas. Now, I do know the root of this, but as somebody from the UK, it just seems so wrong that despite knowing the source of the American term, I just can't imagine ever wanting to use it. So first thing is, you're putting gas in your tank, but you're not, are you? Gas is a thing. Gas means it's a gas. Gas is a vapour. Gas is fumes. And petrol is a liquid. And you're putting the same thing in the tank as us. So where's this come from? Why do you have gas tanks, gas stations, and you have a gas pedal? It's a throttle in the UK, or a throttle pedal, or sometimes called incorrectly the accelerator pedal. So where does this come from? Let's start with the UK. We have petrol, and petroleum is the source of that. So petrol is just an abbreviation of that. And petroleum is a scientific description of the substance we're putting in the tank. And that comes from the Latin, and you've got petra, petrified, rock. And you've got oleum, oil-like. It is oil from rock, petroleum. That is literally what it is, and it describes the substance you're sticking in the tank. And we call it petrol, just because we abbreviate. Then we go over to the States, and yes, gas, that actually comes from gasoline. And gasoline is more of a brand name connected thing than anything else. But the logic behind it is in fractioning oil. You're basically splitting it out from heavier oils, something you might stick in your engine, into the various more volatile or lighter oils, including petroleum, right up there, very light. Gas is at the top of the scale, so there's this sort of illusion to it's the lightest oil or amongst the light oils. But I think it does link back to some trade names. But it's pretty universal. I'd be really interested to hear from our friends in America and Canada, I believe, as well. You call it gas. Do you ever use the expression petrol? Is it ever written on petrol pumps or gas pumps? And do you have a better version of the etymology of that? Where does this change come from? What makes it even more interesting is that petroleum was well established as the name of petrol well before the European colonization of America. It was a known thing. So it changed at some point to gas. And that is one that just froze Brits. I'm going to go and get some gas. That does not mean the same. I go to various places to get gas for my camper van, but it's to cook with, to work the stove. I burn gas in a stove. The next one is something that used to be quite a big deal, less so now. The gearboxes, which require you to shift them yourself, are manual transmissions. In the States, these would be known as standard transmissions, or as stick shifts, or slang as 4 on the floor, all these other things. But manual is the common expression in the UK. And this, I think, is easily explainable, that there is this subtle difference. We all understand what each of us is talking about, but these subtle differences are just due to the predominance of automatic transmissions in the States. So you buy a car, you're going to expect it to have an automatic transmission, and if you want manual, then you're going to have to specify it or go look for it. It's the more specialist generally. In the UK, even though it's got to be said, we have adopted automatics to a great extent these days. It is always presumed that you want a manual transmission unless you ask for an automatic, and manual transmissions will still greatly outweigh the automatic transmissions in UK car park. But again, as we've discussed a few times now, you've got to say that the American naming conventions do tend to come from that's what it is, you know, see it, say it, that's what it's called. So standard transmission is a slight misnomer, I guess, but stick shift makes absolute sense. 4 on the floor, old expression for a manual transmission. Yeah, 3 on the tree is a common expression for an automatic shift around the column. So 3 on a tree, the trunk of the tree being the steering column. I do love that say what you see naming convention. Our next one is kind of interesting because it opens up a wider discussion that I'm really interested in your input on. And that is the lever, which usually, except on XK8s and a few others, is on the middle of the transmission tunnel. In the UK, that is absolutely the handbrake. Handbrake. It sounds like it should be an American description. It's a handbrake. As opposed to the foot brake, which is the one you apply whilst you're driving using your foot. In the States, that handbrake is the same device, but it is usually called the e-brake emergency brake or parking brake. Now, in themselves, they're not too controversial. If we say handbrake to somebody in the States, they're going to know what we're talking about. If they say emergency brake or parking brake, we're going to know what they're talking about. I'm wondering if there's a clue in usage as to why these have diverged as pieces of language. And I might be completely wrong in this, and I'm more than happy to be proven wrong. And this is mainly based on American movies. So, pinch of salt. In the UK, predominantly, we will have manual gearboxes. And in America, there is a huge predominance of automatic transmissions. Just, again, different naming conventions. And if you park one of our manual gearbox vehicles on a hill and you don't apply the handbrake, it's going to be gone when you come back. It's as simple as that. Some people put their cars in gear to stop them from rolling if the handbrake should fail. But that is generally frowned upon by driving instructors because it suggests you don't need the handbrake, which legally you must apply the handbrake when parking a car. And there is the most remote possibility of a car bump starting itself, particularly if it's diesel. But that aside, the main issue is you forget, you get in the car, turn the ignition on, and it will start and go. And particularly if your friend parked the car, who's a user of gears to stop you moving, and then you jump in and you're not that same person, you don't use the gears to stop you, you turn the ignition, boom, boom, pull straight out into traffic. So we use the handbrake. We don't, as a rule, use gears to stop us from moving unless we're in an extreme situation on a very steep slope with slightly dodgy brake, that sort of thing. Now, back in the States, again, this is all based on movies. I really struggle to see any movie where cops are jumping out of cars. When they pull up to a halt quite quickly, I can't concentrate on anything else. They get out of the car and I see the car creep forward or creep back by 2 or 3 inches because they put it in park and the car rolls against the transmission lock. And that says the handbrake, e-brake, emergency brake or parking brake has not been applied. And I do know from a lot of my conversations with friends, subscribers across the world, but again, mainly in the States, maybe we're talking about adjusting the handbrake, which can be problematical on an XK8. And they just say, just leave it off. I've never used the handbrake. And to me, that's like, oh, how do you park? Well, of course, it's automatic and there is no manual version of the XK8, so it's not going to roll away. But is that the reality? It's an emergency brake. It doesn't actually get used that much. And is that why the language is diversified from handbrake? We use a handbrake whenever we're on a slope at traffic lights, and then release it and balance with the clutch to go in our manual cars. It's in use all the time. It's part of the driving experience. Whereas in the States, again, lots of automatic cars. You don't have that balancing clutches and hill starts and all that sort of stuff because automatics generally deal with all that. Is that where the difference comes from? Interested. And am I reading American movies wrong? Do you all leave your handbrakes off? Okay, types of car. We're just going to rattle through a few here. And the first one, not really a type of car, but a description. In the UK, we will often say, I've got a banger. In the States, that same expression would be, I've got a beater. Banger and beater both mean I've got a car that is a little bit rough and it doesn't really matter where I park it. And if it came back and it got scratched, I'm not going to be worried about it. So it's a rough vehicle, but knowingly, it's kind of the intent. We have a couple of expressions in the UK which link to banger. So one is bangonomics, which I really like. It's the concept of buying a rough but usable car and balancing the cost of the repairs and patches up to keep it going versus its very low price to buy. And in many ways, blue was an example of posh bangonomics. The opposite side of the coin is obviously you buy a new or nearly new vehicle, you'd expect it to be reliable, nothing much to go wrong, but you pay a lot more out at the front. So that's bangonomics. Another thing is we have banger racing. Banger racing is closed circuit oval racing, a contact sport in which you can basically run any style of vehicle. It must have a safety cage and other things for safety like no glass. But, if you want to rock up in an old Rover or a Jaguar or a Cadillac or a Vauxhall Corsa, it doesn't matter. It's a banger. You can run around the track. First to the end wins. Contact. More than tolerated. That's banger racing. It's very popular. Beaters, same sort of concept. It's just a beaten up car that's going to get beaten on, or you're going to beat it with mileage. And again, it's an exercise in what you can afford and making it work for you. The next is, in the UK, we would say that this is a saloon car. It's a 3-box vehicle where the only access to the interior for where the passengers sit is through the doors, 4 doors in this particular case. Hatchbacks, you could get into the interior through the back, or to put it another way, the luggage compartment is contained sort of within the main body of the car. It's a 2-box design as opposed to a 3-box design. In America, we would call this a sedan. Now, both of these actually come from very, very similar places, and I think actually the sedan is probably a nicer expression and less likely to get confused. Saloon has an issue for some people in the States because saloon is another term for a bar or pub, somewhere you go drink. You should never drink inside your car, kids. Stay safe. So sedan is probably the more universal expression worldwide, but saloon is quite an elegant term. A saloon is a gathering space, a comfortable gathering place that people want to go and meet and sit in. So we do have saloon areas in bars. A saloon is possibly a reception area in a hotel that's particularly comfortable. And it makes a lot more sense when you start to think of the French version of this is salon. Salon privé, the hairdressing salon. Places people want to gather and be looked after. That's what that's about. It's basically you've taken the functional bits of the vehicle, the engine and the trunk or boot, and you've taken them away. So it's just a pleasant place to be in the middle. And it was applied to early luxury cars in the UK. Typically your cheaper car would have an engine, and then it would have a cab, and you might have a box or boot or trunk bolted to the outside. Well, a really posh cars, it was a fully integrated design with boot, fully integrated, but it still had the saloon in the middle. Sedan chair is another good way of looking at it. Sedan chair is a carriage for people on a stretcher, basically. So people would carry it from the outside. So the front and the rear are functional areas where servants would carry the people who were very comfortable in the sedan. So both of them work, and I think overall I have a preference for sedan, just because you don't think we're drinking if we say I'm going down the road in my saloon. Then we have, in the UK, estate cars. An estate car is very usually a saloon that has been modified by the manufacturer to increase the size of the glass house and massively increase its luggage carrying capacity, but it is based on a saloon. In the States, this is very similar, although I believe there are some estate cars, it says inverted commas, that may have been designed like that from the outset and never turned into a sedan. And in the States, these are known as station wagons. And station wagons do tend to be larger than our estates, and some station wagons are a little bit more elevated than our estates, but it's all part of that same family. We mean the same thing. Sources: an estate car is for running around an estate. An estate is a big plot of land that maybe a wealthy landowner might have in the UK. And yeah, he's wanting to move around in relative luxury, but might be carrying some tools or a bale of hay or a sheep. Who can tell? Station wagons come from the idea of modified vehicles being used in the States to maybe collect foreign hotel from the railway station. So you go and fetch the passengers and all their luggage and all the rest of it. And you got this idea of a station wagon. It's not really a truck. You don't want to collect your visitors or their luggage in a truck. It's a car-like vehicle, but with a lot more capacity on the back. So estate car or station wagon. Neither is, I think, going to confuse either party. I have a preference for the estate car because I just think it sounds a little bit posher. And whilst we're on this particular topic, I'll just share another term that I'm familiar with in the UK, but I'm not sure has an equivalent in the US, or that you use this term either. And that is, if you've got what can only be described as an estate car, but its designer has not allowed function to ruin its looks. In other words, it's been made stylish, even if that limits how many cases or pheasants you can insert into it. And that is, we have what we call shooting brakes. And a shooting brake is a sporting estate car. It's a rare thing. You might almost say it's the coupe of estate cars. In the UK, we've had various vehicles launched but from newer shooting brakes. The most obvious example is the Reliant Scimitar. So it is an estate car in profile, but 3-litre engine, long bonnet, estate style back bodywork and hatch, and it does have a load area, but actually it's more of a sporting car, GT car, than it is an estate car. It's a shooting brake. And the other shooting brakes that we're familiar with, a lot of them are quite limited run, bespoke. People have shooting brakes commissioned and made. In the Jaguar world, you may be familiar with Lynx Eventas, and these are shooting brakes. They don't generally refer to them as estate cars. That would be too common. The source of the word is a little bit lost in time. It's certainly got to do with, it's an estate car, but it's more for the hunting shooting set, so sporting. But brake, spelled B-R-A-K-E, like brake pedal, not sure. I think it's probably one of these words that's changed over time and we've lost its original meaning. But shooting brakes. Jaguar actually relaunched the name shooting brake for the Jaguar XF estate car, which does in fairness have a really good stylish tail end and does look very attractive. We wouldn't say it was massively compromised. So shooting brake is probably pushing the envelope in terms of bringing that name back. Okay, I'm going to park this one there just because the video gets longer and longer if I'm not careful, and hope that you found that one interesting. I'm really looking forward to your comments because I do want some input. What do you think of what I'm saying? Is any of it absolute bobbins? Have you got better etymologies for particularly the American side of the equation, where these words come from? Are there any of the words I'm using that are British, completely alien to you? I doubt it, but it's different territories, different parts of the world. Who can tell? Next time, part 3, we'll get into some more of the parts of a car, as in engine, oily bits, etc., components, and how we name them differently, and also maybe throw in some of the hand tools that we get involved with. So look forward to seeing you then, but please comment. Carry on the conversation in the comments below. If you're enjoying our channel, then don't forget to subscribe and click the little bell icon so you get notifications of new videos. And please give us a thumbs up or thumbs down, and you can share the videos. And below the video is always the area where you can comment and get involved with the chat.